examination, you can see that the revolutions that you see initially can be divided into two phases. The first, you can see an incidental or influential effect of Freemasonry, both in the American and French Revolution, and in the Hispanic movement, independence movement, and the Italian Wars for Independence. You actually see a very direct impact of Freemasonry. So, what am I talking about? These pictures, all right, if you're looking at them beginning from top left to top right to bottom, first one is Bunker Hill. That second one is the Battle of Camden in South Carolina, and the third is the Siege of Yorktown. Now, we all know, just from our own American history, how influential Freemasons were. Approximately 40% of Washington's army is made up of Freemasons. Substantial amounts of our enlightened doctrines you can find, not only in the Declaration of Independence, but certainly the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution as well. The picture is a little bit more muddled, though, than I think we like to view. And here's an example. All right. I want to walk through a few of the figures that you see here. Again, beginning at top left, that gentleman there, that's Dr. Warren. He is the president of the Second Continental Congress, Freemason, Grand Master in Massachusetts, and he dies at the Battle of Bunker Hill. And the Battle of Bunker Hill, the troops that he is facing are the troops of the gentleman to his right. That's Henry Clinton, and his troops are held in reserve. The third and final wave is when they push over, and he's actually killed in one of the readouts. Henry Clinton was providing assistance in reserve to the gentleman that you see to his right. That's William Howe. He becomes, following the relief of General Gage, he becomes the commander of American forces within the colonial theater, the American theater specifically. And throughout the war, until he is relieved in 1779, he corresponds with his very, very good friend, Benjamin Franklin, and his Masonic brother. He is actually very sympathetic to the colonies, even though he is the commanding general who is actually attempting to suppress the American War for Independence. And Benjamin Franklin, whom we certainly revere as among our greatest Freemasons, among our greatest founding fathers, I think we also forget that he was one of the most famous men in America at the time when he participated in the Revolution. He probably at the time, before George Washington was universally known, was the most famous American worldwide, and was a very loyal British subject. Essentially until the point that he is brought in before the King's Privy Council, he's sort of an ambassador of sorts before when we were the American colonies. He was sort of an ex-official to the British government. He would press our concerns. He was a sort of a quasi-ambassador, even though at the time it wasn't, we were not a separate nation. And if you know much about his history, his son is governor of New Jersey, and his son remains a loyalist and is later arrested and disowned by Benjamin Franklin. One of the great things about Franklin is he was such a powerful diplomat, such an influential diplomat, that he was able to recruit a number of people to the cause. Quite obviously, we're fighting the most powerful army in the world at the time, certainly land army. So you're looking for people that have experience in Austrian War of Secession, the 7 Years' War, something of that nature. And by way of example, he recruits the gentleman that you see now to your bottom right. That is General DeKalb. And he is, well, Baron DeKalb, German. He is a major general. And if you recall the first picture that you saw, that was about our Bunker Hill, where Dr. Warren is killed by forces that are commanded by his Masonic brethren. Likewise, in the Battle of Camden, that's where General DeKalb is killed. And he's killed in 1780, and he's killed by forces by the gentleman to his right. That is Lord Cornwallis. So when he is buried, he gets a full Masonic funeral. And the person that gives the Masonic oration is Lord Cornwallis, who has just defeated him at the Battle of Camden. It looked like the entire revolution is about to go down the tube at that point. Following that, you have Lord Cornwallis. His forces are essentially trying to trap the American army to the south. They're on the run with Nathaniel Greene. We in North Carolina, all of our revolutionary sites are essentially places that he tried to get to, was unsuccessful, and Greene managed to push his forces a little bit farther. And eventually he goes to the peninsula of Yorktown, and that's where he's trapped. He's trapped by the gentleman to his right. That's General George Washington. And it is on that peninsula that he is isolated. And the reason that he loses isn't because his forces are inferior or anything of that nature. He is in an untenable position, a kill box of sort, because he requires naval support. And Admiral de Grasse at the time has the peninsula of Yorktown in the Chesapeake Bay. He has it well fortified. So General Washington, his Masonic brother, essentially has to just jump redoubts. And eventually they get to the point where they can put the cannons in range, and at that point the game is over. And Cornwallis doesn't even show enough respect to come out and offer his surrender. He gives it to a subordinate, who then tries to offer his surrender to the French Admiral de Grasse, who refuses. And the American forces accept the surrender. And it is because of Admiral de Grasse that they were successful at Yorktown. And for those who know anything about the American Revolution, it's actually really the Second World War. The first being what we call the French Indian War, the 7 Years' War. That is a global conflict. And following that, de Grasse sails down to the West Indies, and he is captured by the gentleman to his right, or to rather his great ally Washington's right, and that is Sir Peter Parker, not the Spider-Man version, but this gentleman was the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodges of England, and was later the Admiral of the White, and he actually captures that. So I think from this scenario, and by the way, this isn't something I pulled out of materials. This is 6 degrees of separation that I was able to pretty easily form on my own. It shows the confused nature of that and the relationship of Freemasonry as an organized body in philosophy. There are certainly a number of Freemasons that are participating in the revolution, and certainly a number of Freemasons participating on our side, the American side. There's also an equal number that are participating on the British side. And it is this sort of mixed nature that I think it makes it difficult to call America a Masonic revolution. In regard, it is oftentimes is not. The forces that are opposing each other are Masons on each side. They'll be led by Masons, and some are actually sympathetic to each other. And as you can just tell from this series of photos and biographies I just threw together, you can have unbroken string from the time of our first major conflict to the time of our last, from Breeds Hill, Bunker Hill, and to the siege of Yorktown. You can see Freemasons at every step of the way. And I think in that regard, it becomes a little bit more confused. Part of the rationale being, why we think of it as strictly an American Revolution. Well, in 1783, what do you do if you were a loyalist? If you're a loyalist, which about a third of the American population was, you got to leave, because, anyone that's been to Kings Mountain will know if you are a loyalist, and you are on Kings Mountain, you're still there right now. You never got to leave. That becomes a scenario. So our understanding of Freemasonry is a little bit skewed in this time frame, because the people that were also Freemasons that were loyal either redeployed back to the British theater, or they were loyalist supporters. Again, about a third were loyalists, about a third were patriots, and about a third didn't want anything to do with anything. And those people went to Canada, they went to the West Indies, or they went back to Great Britain. They had to leave because, like I said, Kings Mountain being a great example, there wasn't going to be you weren't going to have a long history. So for those of you like myself that have a long history in the state, your family has a long history in the state, I think what you see is that there are powerful forces at work that are Freemasons. There are powerful Freemasons that are contributing, not just contributing, that are pinnacle to that. To the extent that it was Freemasonry is a little bit hard to say, because it was a scenario where both sides had substantial individuals. We also think about the French Revolution, I think, when we think with regards to Freemasonry. And I see a hand raised. And just at the end, we put in the question and answer block. I'd love to do that. Be a little hard right now, I think, in this format. So again, what you see in the first portion, beginning from left to right again, that is Louis Philippe II, the Duc d'Orléans, who is sort of an odd figure within the French Revolution. He is also the Grand Master of the Orient of France. He is the cousin to Louis XVI, and in an odd circumstance, he couldn't stand his cousin, hated his guts, provided the deciding vote to execute his cousin during the French Revolution. That is the Marquis de Lafayette in the center, and Moreau is to the right. And on the bottom screen, on the bottom portion of the screen rather, beginning from right to left, those are the brothers of Napoleon. And again, it'd be easy to look at that and say to yourself, there's strong evidence that the French Revolution is a Masonic revolution. Many of the leading figures within that are Freemasons. The National Assembly, which is the first assembly that's created, about 24% are Freemasons. You may say, certainly in the Napoleonic era, that Freemasonry had a subsequent revolution in France. Again, using all of the gentlemen that you see on the bottom row are Freemasons. The brother Louis is Grand Master of the Orient. The Deputy Grand Master is his brother. So again, you can see substantial influence. Here's the trick with the French Revolution and why it's substantially different than, say, the American Revolution. The French Revolution is a series of revolutions. And if you study the French Revolution, there isn't really a stable 20-year period in France until they're defeated in the Franco-Prussian War. So where we think of the American Revolution, we're thinking of a singular period of time. And we're thinking of a very unified group. The founding fathers don't change. There aren't series of founding fathers. By way of example, the Duke d'Orleans was, as well as Marquis de Lafayette, who somehow makes it through all of these periods. I don't know how he lives to die in his bed, but considering all of the different revolutions he has been through, and the fact that he didn't end up in a guillotine is remarkable. But there's Girondins, the gentleman that is to the extreme right is a Jacobin, and he was calling for the heads of both of those gentlemen, his Masonic brethren. And they don't have a unified theory. There, you hear about liberty, equality, but it's a series of revolutions that's actually taking place in France, and they really don't end until about 85 years later. And my rationale and my thinking with regards to the gentleman at the bottom, the brothers of Napoleon. So why would that not be a revolution in of itself, or at least a subsequent one? Napoleon himself is never a Freemason. Napoleon himself is also very keen to control those who have influence. And just like each of those gentlemen is a puppet king, and without boring you about each principality or each kingdom that they would have ruled, he employed them in the Orient of France in that same manner, puppets, to essentially maintain control over powerful forces, Freemasonry being one of them. I think it's also important to note, particularly with the American Revolution, that not everybody that began these revolutions are revolutionary. Benjamin Franklin is an outstanding example. He's not looking to start a revolution. He believes that as Englishmen in the colonies, that they should have the rights of Englishmen, and that they are simply not being afforded their rights. He is advocating for the rights of Englishmen in the New World. He's not advocating for a new nation. It isn't until shots are fired and it becomes essentially an untenable scenario that he does. It looks like I'm going to be over time. They're forced to be revolutionaries. Now, you jump forward a little bit, and we begin to the Hispaniola revolutions. Just for brevity of time, the gentleman that you see in the center, that's Simón Bolívar. He is essentially the liberator of virtually every nation that you can find within the South American continent and Central America. Bolivia has his name, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Peru. He fought more battles than virtually any man in history. He literally rode on horse 10 times the amount that Hannibal rode during his lifetime. And his involvement is predicated through his association with Freemasonry. Now, it's jumped in time a little bit. We're talking about the beginning of the 18th century. And at this time, now there's a little bit of a division. The people that are pushing these independence movements are not Benjamin Franklin. They're not people that are forced to be revolutionaries. They're not accidental revolutionaries. They're not revolutionaries by fate. These are people who have made a determined effort to rid their country of a foreign power. And in doing so, what do? You look back on history, you look back on what devices can be used, and what you find is that many of them look back to the American Revolution. They see that a number of people are Freemasons, and they're also essentially in exile. You know, they're expatriates either in Paris or in London. And what they find is the place that they can find like-minded people, certainly their own countrymen that are trying to escape, in this instance, the Spanish, are in Masonic lodges. Probably a little bit of a of a side point to this is it may be based on the fact that the papal bulls that prohibit Catholics from joining Freemasons. We, in our history, have never discriminated in terms of religion, as is evidenced by the gentleman that you'll see in these slides. But you can generally feel comfortable that you're not looking at a Spanish agent in a lodge. So when you meet someone that has like-minded ideals, and if you're essentially going to recruit someone, you find that Masonry is a very good place. So it is actually used as a device at this point. These are people that are professional revolutionaries. They're going to kick these foreign influencers out of their country. And if you look at the entire whole of South America, it's Masonic. It is a Masonic movement. The people that are leading these revolutions are people that were in the Grand Lodge of England when they were in London as expatriates. Bolivar goes through the rites in Paris. It actually becomes a networking agency. And that is also shown in the Italian Second War of Independence. That's Geribald Garate, who is, my apologies. There we go. So he has been a part, he is essentially the functional equivalent of George Washington to the Italian people in terms of the Italian unification. Following the first Italian War of Independence, which essentially occurs in 1848, he becomes the proponent in the Second War. He actually joins Freemasonry very late. Again, he has found it as a device. He is a professional revolutionary. He studies revolutions. He comes to Freemasonry when he's about 37. He is not terribly interested in the ritualistic items within our craft. He's very interested in the philosophical, and he's very interested in having the opportunity to meet like-minded individuals. And very similar to the Hispanic wars of independence, he finds that he can talk to like-minded people, recruit like-minded people, and do that through the Masonic lodges. And he is the individual that is probably most critical to removing the Austro-Hungarian influence. So, what's the point? What am I saying all this for? I think it's important to understand first the larger nature of our craft. It's so easy for us. We're North Carolinians. We're North Carolina Freemasons. You know, we identify as that. I'm an American. I'm a North Carolinian. I'm a Freemason. It's harder to appreciate sometimes the universality of our craft, how much we have influenced the world, how much we have in terms of our own history. So I just wanted the opportunity to kind of expand your mind in that regard, give you something to think about. I think it's also important because in doing that, I think we sometimes fail to acknowledge just how cool it is to be a Freemason. I mean, it's just amazing. If you really break it down there, not only do we have the instance where our people are directly involved in the majority of revolutions that you'll find in the 18th and 19th century. I think you can find instances where, just like that, the Hispanic wars for independence, the Italian wars for independence, where it is being directly utilized, their connections. You really do see that. And if you take nothing away from this, nothing away from my presentation, just remember, if anything else, just we're pretty badass. I mean, it's pretty awesome. And that's what I've always loved about Freemasonry. One of the experiences I had within one of my deployments was having the opportunity to, sit in a lodge where I had the opportunity to meet Masons from all over the globe, see them as they came in and came out. It was in Kandahar. It's just a remarkable experience, and it really got me down that road to understanding the history of our craft. And I appreciate your indulgence in this regard, and certainly being a part of it. And I have gone over. My apologies. And I'm going to stop the presentation and see if we can take some questions.
Not too over, Brother Bobby.
Yes.
So yeah, so not too over on time. We actually have a good 6 minutes for questions. So anybody wants to raise their hand or throw a question out there into the.
Okay.
Looks like we have one.
All right.
Is there is there evidence that brethren on opposite sides of the conflicts ever sat in a lodge together or knew that they were fighting a brother directly?
Great question. So by way of example, the Battle of Camden is a good example, where there's instances where, in spite of the fact that Lord Cornwallis is literally on the precipice of crushing the American Army of the South, in spite of the fact that this is, if you know about the American War for Independence, the Southern campaigns are essentially a civil war, loyalist against loyalist against patriot, and brother against brother. And that's a good instance where they stopped to bury General DeKalb. And of course, the problem is record keeping. I don't know that there are substantial numbers of that. Some of the best evidence is actually through the Library of Congress. If you look through, and which Benjamin Franklin's papers are online, you can simply look through those and search Freemason. You find he has all kinds of crazy stories in there, and you actually do see things like that. By way of example, I mean, you have Benjamin Franklin, who is corresponding with the commanding general of British forces at the time that he is the commanding general of British forces. That's nuts. Can you imagine chairman of the Joint Chiefs and, I don't know, ISIL commanders corresponding? I mean, there's very few times that you'll see something like that, and I think it's their Masonic connection.
So we have another
you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I believe that was, should have read the name, Brother Casey Shaw. So next question, Brother Jesse Tillman. What is it about Freemasonry other than connections that led to the advancement of revolution? The ability to discuss without consequences? Was it the Reformation? Was that a Freemason-led revolution besides Luther? What is it that leads to revolution?
You know, we have a unique scenario in that our revolution is one of the few that was unified, and that's why you can see the influence of Freemasons within the American Revolution. And there's certainly the Enlightenment principles. I think that was the what leads to revolution can vary, but think of us as the lid. I think it's arguable that the French Revolution is probably the most important in terms of historical revolutions, but we are the first. We're the first true revolution that you'll find that where you're forming a nation state out of that, and it really does open up the lid. I mean, I didn't talk about there's the Haitian Revolution. If you really want to talk about the French Revolution, we're talking about a dozen. I mean, whether it's the various forms of groups that come to power until the triumvirate, until Napoleon, until he makes himself emperor, and then after him, the Bourbons come back. Louis Philippe, who is the son of the Duke d'Orléans when he takes power. But I think certainly in later times, the Masonic connection is very, very important. I mean, think about this. If you are a Spanish subject, you are on the run. You have no home, you have no networking, and you find yourself in London. Who do you go to? Quite often what you do is you go to the lodge. You go to a lodge that your other Latin American brothers are in, and you're able to network. It's the same thing within the Italian Freemasonry. certainly in the Grand Orient of Italy, they find that they're able to actually find like-minded individuals. And again, I don't know if some of that was the fact that both the Austro-Hungarian, Austrian Empire actually at the time, and the Spanish monarchy, because they were so heavily Catholic, didn't have the ability to insert agents, so they felt comfortable in those forums. But I really do think it's hard to deny in those two revolutions that it's a pretty direct influence. It really is. Any other questions I can help with?
See, just looking to see if we have a Battle of Alamo, stories of General Santa Anna saving Freemasons.
I've heard those. I mean, I've heard that. It's, I think in terms of burial is what it became. And I don't want to speak off the cuff because I'll probably be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it was it Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie? Was it Bowie that was? I'm probably speaking. I think Crockett was. And I think with Santa Anna, no quarters. They always talk about the Alamo being a no quarter. That's not entirely true. I mean, he does actually release those in bondage. He releases the women, the children. And he does separate out the Freemasons for burial, is my understanding. I wasn't there. I don't know how true those stories are. But yeah, I have heard that with the Alamo.
And there's another question similar with Brother John Birchfield. Is there any documentation pertaining to the Civil War, evidence of Masonic brothers from opposite sides helping each other? And I know I'm a member of Charles M. Setzer Lodge, and there was an armed Masonic
brothers.
And is that the title of the book? It's put out by the North Carolina Grand Lodge, and is it Brothers Helping Brothers? And it has documented stories from the Civil War. I don't remember the title of the book, but it has documented stories of the Civil War.
Angels of our nature.
Incidents documented. Is that what it's called? Yeah. It's a great book, and it actually goes through specific examples, Brother Birchfield.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like off the top of my head, there's the Brothers Helping Brothers. When I was in the War College, you did your final field walk you did through the battlefield at Gettysburg, and Low Armistead, who was in Pickett's division in reserve, which is horrible if you think about it. I mean, you've just seen everybody else wiped out, so now you're going forward. His best friend and Masonic brother is Hancock, who commands the Second Corps, who is precisely who he's facing, and he's the Confederate general, places his hat on his sword and goes forward. He actually makes it the furthest of just about any Confederate. He's mortally wounded on the cannon, and he gives the grand hailing sign of distress. And it's actually Hancock's aide, who is also a Freemason, who comes and assists him. Mortal wounds in the Civil War doesn't mean you die right there. Just like everything, it takes you about a day to die. And at the time, I think Hancock had already been wounded himself, so he was concerned about Hancock, and he's there. He just crossed over to the battlefield at Gettysburg. His brigade and the entire division have just been repulsed, and he's going to die. And his concern is about his Masonic brother. And if you actually look at, there's the statue at Gettysburg, the Brothers Helping Brothers, and that's what it references. Great question.
Well, we're about up on time for questions. We've got one here that's to the Grand Master, which we can hold over to the Grand Master's section at the end.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Great. All right. Virtual claps. So now we're going to move on. When we thought about taking the presentation and getting together with the brethren from around the state, particularly in this peculiar time of COVID-19, we thought, we've got the Mesh outreach program. Not a lot of folks know about it. We've been working over the last couple of years to get the word out about it. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to invite Brother Mark Lewis, who's the Executive Director of Whitestone, to speak a little bit about the Mesh LLC outreach program and how that works and give some information to the brethren. Brother Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good evening. And I really appreciate this opportunity to spread the word about this program. So thank you, Grandmaster, and thank you, Grand Line officers, and everybody that was responsible for putting this together this evening. Jonathan, I'm going to have to ask you to control the slides, if you don't mind. So while we wait for that, just wanted to say greetings from Whitestone. I talked to several brothers and sisters today that and mentioned that I was going to be speaking to the group this evening, and they wanted to send their greetings. Everybody's doing well, everybody's healthy, and they just wanted to send their greetings along. And I know we may have a couple in attendance this evening, like Worshipful Master Gene Llewellyn, I believe, was going to be on the call this evening. And I just want to say hello and a special shout out to Brother Wayne Southern. Just wanted to let you know, Wayne, we've been thinking about you. So hopefully you're doing well. So again, thank you for this opportunity. And, you know, the outreach program, which was a partnership that was created between Whitestone and the North Carolina Masonic and Eastern Star Home Foundation, LLC, was created in 2016 to offer assistance to our brothers and sisters where they need the help and when they need the help. And that assistance comes in a number of different forms. If you could move to slide 2, please. So first of all, there's several services and assistance that's provided through the program. First of all, it comes in the form of financial assistance, emergency assistance, and long-term assistance. And then also probably the most underutilized resource that our outreach program currently provides right now is case management. And case management comes, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but we have resources at Whitestone in our outreach coordinator that can help brothers and sisters, you know, wherever they call home across North Carolina, in terms of finding the healthcare and the support and services they need. We also provide assistance in making those healthcare referrals. You know, many are unfamiliar. That's unfamiliar territory when it comes to needing, whether it's short-term rehabilitation, long-term care, memory care. We can help you to find a location in your own local community that's going to be able to meet your needs. And last but not least, we are also available to provide support to our widows through the outreach program. So just by reaching out and saying, we are here for you. So slide 3, please. So let's talk about the financial assistance that's provided through the outreach program. First of all is short-term assistance. As you can see there on the slide, you know, this assistance can come to help you when you need it through whether it's for help with your rent, your mortgage, utility bills, other types of medical equipment, other support you might need. So it's available to you, and really the whole purpose of this outreach program is really to help brothers and sisters stay at home, get the services and support that they need to do so long term. So short-term financial support, you know, when you're going through an emergency situation, could be a great opportunity to help you to do that. And in these times of COVID-19, this is a situation where many people have been out of work and are struggling financially. And the outreach program can help a brother throughout these difficult times. So that's just one example of financial support that's available through the program. Next slide, please. Long-term financial assistance. So we can provide assistance long-term to brothers and sisters, individuals that, you know, maybe have outlived their resources. Maybe they've had a bout to health or acute or long-term health situation that has really occupied their resources, and they've run out of resources, and they just need some support month to month to pay their bills and to stay at home, get the services they need. So long-term financial assistance is available. So we do a very good job of maintaining contact with the individual if they are approved through the Mesh LLC board to see if their needs change. But month to month assistance is available through the outreach program. And I'll give you an example, one of many that I have through the outreach program over the last couple of years. I had a brother reach out to me that was 84 years old at the time, and again had just outlived his resources. Was about to lose his home and everything he had. And so through the application process, got to know him really well, and he was very appreciative of everything that we were doing and this program was providing him. And fortunately, that brother was provided the approval to get month-to-month subsidy to help him pay his bills, and he is, living at home and enjoying life right now, which is, a great thing for me to be a part of. I love seeing those success stories. Another example that I have is not so much a pleasant example, but one of which we had a brother in the Winston-Salem area that had recently passed away that was getting support because he was going through chemotherapy treatments. They were having a hard time making ends meet, and we were able to provide them that support so they could, focus on what was important, the health and well-being of that brother and the family. So there's opportunities through the outreach program to get the financial assistance you may need. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, probably the most underutilized service that the outreach program provides is the case management. We have a lot of resources and a lot of knowledgeable people that we can utilize as a resource for members that need help. Whether it's filling out a VA application, which if you've not done that, sometimes it's a difficult thing to do, or a Medicaid application, or you need assistance with providing or getting transportation provided. We have an outreach coordinator and other resources that can help you to get those services and fill out those applications. It's available to be used. It's not used too often, and it's going to be a great resource moving forward, though. Next slide, please. Long-term care referral. So if you're living in, whether you're living out west in the mountains, or if you're living out east and closer to the beach, wherever you call home, we can help you to find a rehab center, a long-term care facility, an assisted living facility, a memory care facility, or just healthcare services in general that are going to be able to meet your needs. We do that because we know where to look to find the quality facilities. And that comes from just, being partnered with Whitestone and being familiar with all the rules and regulations that go along with healthcare. So long-term care referral is another thing that our outreach coordinator can help with. And then last but not least, next slide, is widow assistance. So we reach out to widows. We let them know that the outreach program is there to help them if they ever need the help, just to support them. Sometimes, when they lose a lifelong partner like that, they're lost. And sometimes that lifelong partner may have, for example, handled all the bills. We can help them through a lot of different scenarios. So the outreach coordinator reaches out to widows across the state of North Carolina to see where we can help. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So that really kind of sums up the services that we provide through that outreach program. And what I can ask you all to do and how you can help is help spread the word. For the last couple of years, I think utilization of the program has been down, but I am proud and happy to announce that the phone line has been ringing the past several months, and we are processing applications. But I will also say that we have more help to give. So if you know of someone, a brother or sister that may benefit from many of the services that the outreach program can provide, please give us a call. If you have a member of a lodge, again, as the slide shows, that has not paid their dues and you haven't checked in a while, please check in and see if they are struggling. If they are struggling, refer them to the outreach program. As I mentioned, we have more help to give. This next slide really kind of goes through what the process is for an outreach referral. So basically, if there is a need for assistance, whether it be financial or case management or other type of assistance, contact the outreach coordinator. And the phone number is 336-601-5593. And our outreach coordinator is Rebecca Gallimore. Rebecca stepped into this role just a few months ago, but has been working with Whitestone for the last 3 years. And so this is a newer role to her, but she's really hit the ground running and is doing well. So you could also email Rebecca at rgallimore@liveatwhitestone.org. So what would happen then is that Rebecca would do an initial phone interview with the applicant, start to complete the application, take in some information, then potentially a home visit may or may not be necessary. And then Rebecca would come out and do a face-to-face interview at that time, if appropriate. And then last but not least, we gather up all that information. We submit it to the Mesh LLC Board of Managers, which consists of 5 members, all Masons or Eastern Star members, and they make a determination on the application. And then I'll tell you that in my experience that the Mesh LLC Board of Managers are very generous in terms of providing assistance, because we've been getting a lot of assistance applications over the past several months. And like I said, we have more help to give. So it's been a good partnership. And then on the last page is, again, the contact information for Rebecca Gallimore, our outreach coordinator. And you can always contact me as well at Whitestone. So the outreach program, again, it's a service that's available to provide fraternal assistance all across the state of North Carolina. And even though our phone lines are ringing, I know that we have more assistance to give. And I know there are other brothers and sisters out there that need assistance. So please don't hesitate to give us a call.
Thank you very much, Brother Mark. And we do have a question from Brother Jason Caldwell. What would be a good way to assist or offer assistance to a widow through this program? Could you go back through a little bit more of the detail on the widows piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we get notification that there's a recent passing of a brother, for example, we send out a letter that notifies the widow that says, there's an outreach program available to widows of fraternal members, and kind of outline the assistance that's provided through that outreach program, and really just also provide them an ear in case they need, someone to talk to as well. Because as I said, there's, once you lose a lifelong partner, there's often a period of time where the widow may be a little bit lost, and we just want to be able to help them out through those difficult times.
And then we have another question from a name I recognize, Brother Clayton Wright. He and I are in the Valley of Charlotte Scottish Rite together. Is this info available on the website, on the Whitestone website? How can they get this information to go over in their lodge for an educational and to get the word out on the outreach program?
Probably the best way to get this information is to reach out to Rebecca. You can send her an email, or you can send me an email, or contact me at Whitestone. I would be happy to provide a number of brochures, or I would be happy to come out to the lodge when that time is available to us as we kind of come out of the COVID-19. Or we could also potentially set up a virtual meeting like this evening to help spread that word.
Great, thank you. But, and brethren, this program is really important. As Brother Mark mentioned, this is a way that we can take the dollars that you put into Mesh LLC to support brothers and sisters and keep them in their home versus needing to go to Greensboro. And so really you need to get the word out on this program. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over and introduce our most worshipful Grand Master, Shaun P. Bradshaw, for his closing words and remarks, and anybody he wants to recognize.
Thank you, Gilbert. I do understand that there are a few other Grand Line officers on the line. Of course, Bobby and yourself, Gilbert. I saw that Mike Register was on. I believe David Wicker has joined us, and Kevin Frazier. Jonathan, help me out if I'm missing anybody else that might be on. But I do want to acknowledge that several of our Grand Line officers have been nice enough to join us. If any of them would like to speak, I'll offer the floor to them, and then I'll answer a few questions that have popped up and go through other few items that I think the brethren will find of interest.
Good evening, Grandmaster. It's David Wicker. Just want to say to Bobby, it was a very good presentation. Appreciate you heading this up for us, and look forward to seeing everyone in Lodge soon.
Mike, do you have anything you want to throw out there?
Good evening, most worshipful. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I really enjoyed the presentation. I thought Brother Rideout did a fabulous job. And I'll just say to the brothers out there, it's good to be with you in this format this evening, and hope you've enjoyed this. And we look forward to being with you very soon. Thank you, most worshipful.
Thanks, Mike. Larry, I did see that you had joined us earlier, and I apologize, I forgot you were on. Larry stays on mute, so I'll assume he doesn't have anything he wants to add at this point. How about you, Kevin? Anything, Kevin Frazier? Anything you want to add there?
First of all, I'll just bring, most worshipful, just bring greetings from the West. We finally got the ark finished and made it through the week with our rain. Really appreciate Brother Bobby doing such a great job tonight. And you know, I think it's reminiscent of the great work that has continued on throughout North Carolina, that brothers have been using phone calls and Zoom and everything else to stay in contact with each other and our brothers who can't get out at all, and their widows and all of our families. And we're just really appreciative of all the hard work that our brothers, 35,000 strong throughout North Carolina, continue to do during this time.
Thank you, Kevin. And yeah, we're downhill from you, so we'll be looking for that ark anytime now. Larry, did you come off mute for a second?
You know, I did, because I didn't realize what the platform was doing for me. I didn't realize I had that capability, but just wanted to say I'm enjoying the evening here, and I just can't wait to get back in Lodge with everyone. And thank you for recognizing me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Larry. I see a couple other people that Jonathan has permitted to speak to, and given them the opportunity to speak. I'll put Alvin Billings, my dear brother. How are you doing this evening?
Good evening, most worshipful. I'm doing great. Again, I'm going to echo what everybody else said. We can't wait to get back to meeting folks. But I also think that North Carolina demonstrates that while we're the #1 in the nation as far as communication in our masonry. I do appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to getting back and doing what we do best, which is our fellowship. Thank you.
Thanks, Alvin. We had a few past Grand Masters with us. Of course, most worshipful brother Dewey Pressler, who appointed me, had a chance to say hello to everyone right before we started. And my immediate predecessor, most worshipful brother Mac Sigmund, although it comes up Dwight. Mac, anything you want to share with everybody?
Well, I want to thank the Grand Lodge office and the Grand Lodge officers for putting this venue together. I think it's great. I know everyone misses the fellowship we are used to sharing. Grandmaster, you're doing a great job under difficult circumstances, and we're all supportive of you. And I wish and look forward, as everybody does, for the time we get back together. So thank you again to Gilbert for being our MC, and Bobby for a great presentation. And everybody stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Mac. And most worshipful brother Gene, our dear friend from down east. How's done this evening?
Everything is fine, Grandmaster and Dunn. We certainly appreciate Brother Gilbert and the officers. Brother Bobby, great presentation, enjoyed it. And to you, Grandmaster, for being a leader and getting us to where we have been able to have some virtual meetings. It's a great opportunity. We just miss the fellowship and look forward to being together again soon. Thank you for the opportunity to say hello.
Thank you so much, Gene. Brethren, with that, let me just make a few acknowledgments, and I'll answer a few of the questions that I saw pop up, and then I have just 2 or 3 items that I'll cover relatively quickly. First, I would just want to acknowledge all the effort that went into this evening's presentation from Gilbert and Bobby, Mark, and Jonathan. As best I can tell, this was the brainchild of Bobby and Gilbert kind of working together, and I really appreciate you guys putting this together. The technical stuff that had to happen was Jonathan's doing, so if anything broke technically on anybody's end, just blame Jonathan. Otherwise, we'll applaud him. And Brother Mark, really appreciate the presentation that you did. That outreach program is so important to so many of our brethren, our widows and sisters. And I have to say, I find it amazing how many people still just don't know that program exists and what it can do for those of our dear brethren who have that need. So I want to really thank you again for bringing that presentation this evening. With that, let me address a couple of the questions, maybe 3 or 4 of the questions that I saw that popped up. I saw one regarding fundraisers and the fact that the Governor Cooper has announced allowing the state to move to phase 2. I reviewed the executive order 141 last night, and at this time, based on section 7A1, which basically prohibits mass gatherings of any more than 10 people, which is the same as it currently is in phase 1, I'm inclined not to allow any additional types of fundraisers beyond what we're doing right now. As of today, raffles are permitted, as are golf tournaments. Anything dealing with food, I will need to review in more detail. The problem with food sales is typically the guys that are preparing the food and the way it's prepared. There's a lot of concern around sanitation, disinfecting, and preparation. There's also, I think, a bit of a concern on my part as to how many people would be necessary to actually prepare and handle the food, and whether or not we would be able to stay within the current guidelines outlined for phase 1 and phase 2. So I will review that. If anyone has a question or a concern about a particular type of fundraiser, I would suggest they contact the Commission on Subordinate Lodge Special Activities. They can answer your questions, and if there's something specific about what you want to do or how you want to do it, they can address that with you individually. I saw a couple of people mention that this was just a wonderful opportunity to come together. We have 213 participants right now. That's quite a bit of outreach, and the questions were, can we do this monthly? And I'm not sure if he's still on, but I saw that our chairman of our Masonic Education Committee, Brother Tony Rathbone, who also helped set up our Davy Academy. I'm wondering if perhaps we can use this format to maybe start doing some of the Davy Academy presentations and open it up in a similar manner That way, of course, it will take a little bit of coordination. I hate to put you on the spot, Tony, but you're permitted to speak if you want to just give a yay or a nay immediately. If you want time to think about it, that's fine too.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. I think that's something we can definitely do, and I think we have some people that would be interested in working on that.
Fantastic. Glad to hear. And of course, we've got this one under our belt, so we understand how it works. And any assistance that we can provide you, Tony, or any of the people that you work with the Davie Academy, I'm sure we'll be happy to work on that. There was another question. It's still live on the board. What's the best advice you have for Masons to encourage good men without actually asking them to seek Masonry, to build our lodges in these modern times? Well, brethren, I think it comes down to what my message was in the district meetings, which I know a great number of brethren did not have an opportunity to attend. The message is posted on YouTube, and I believe there's a link on the Grand Lodge website to it. But the short answer is, in order for lodges to attract good men, you have to be engaged in your communities, both as individual brethren, as well as a lodge. In the past, when our lodges were in more of a growth state, the lodge itself was a center of the community. And I feel like, and what I have observed is that those lodges that tend to focus solely on themselves and whose reputation in the community is more related to the fundraisers for themselves and not for the community, maybe don't flourish as much as those that are actually reaching out and contributing to the community. So I would offer that as a short piece of advice. It's not easy to do, but it is a workable method of getting a more positive reputation, or even a reputation in our community. So might be a good place to start. Brethren, there's a couple of things I would like to address before we drop off this evening. The first, many of you are probably aware of the opinion I issued just a few weeks ago related to meeting in a virtual setting. I understand that not everyone will necessarily agree with this opinion, and I'm okay with that. This is a question that I felt needed to be answered. My opinion is laid out, I think, in painstaking detail. I tried to be as thorough as I could. But I do want to just share with you a little bit of the mindset here. We are in unprecedented times. There is not a time when all of our lodges had to go dark like this. And I'm afraid that this will not be the last time. And I felt that because our code did not directly address the opportunity or potential for lodges to transact some form of business in a situation like this, we needed to have some mechanism that could be an outlet for a lodge in case they needed it. To date, I have issued, as of today, 3 dispensations for lodges to meet virtually. 2 of those meetings have already taken place. 1 will take place in the next couple of weeks. The third one, I was holding off on granting that dispensation so I could see what phase 2 was going to look like. I was hopeful that the phase 2 order that the governor released was going to increase the definition of a mass gathering to permit at least 25 people in one location. Had that been the case, I was prepared to issue an order allowing business meetings to operate under certain limited restrictions, but to begin their business meetings. However, because the restriction outlined in that executive order maintains the mass gathering limit at 10 in quote unquote meeting halls, which is essentially what a lodge building is, I feel like through phase 2 until we get to phase 3, we're going to have to remain with my current order, which permits lodge officers to meet for ritual practices and for coaches and candidates to continue doing their practices in either a virtual setting or at lodges. I wish we were able to move forward and get back to the business of masonry in our lodges. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be possible right now. With that said, we also put out a communication, I believe it was late March, I don't have the date right in front of me, asking all of the lodges to put together a list of all their members and begin an outreach program. And the stories I have heard as a result of that, it touches my heart. I've heard from the children of widows who have heard from members of the lodge, showing that they care. I've heard from brethren who were reached for the first time. I've heard from the masters and district deputy grand masters of lodges who indicated, the level of conversations and the types of conversations they were able to have with brethren that they had never met. And what really strikes me about this is, as a fraternity, our role as an individual member is to care about every other member, that aspect of brotherly love. And I'm afraid that what had happened before all this COVID-19 mess was that many of our lodges were focused so internally on those active members, those brethren who came to lodge, that to a large degree we had forgotten about those other members who weren't coming to lodge or were unable to come to lodge. And so, if nothing else, the positive thing that I think has come out of this is that broader outreach to our membership. And I do hope that's something that the lodges will continue to do whenever we open up and begin having our active meetings. One note I just thought about, going back to the virtual lodges, one of the lodges that met virtually, I believe it was Tuesday evening, had a 91-year-old member who was able to attend lodge. It was the first time he'd been in a lodge, although it was virtual, since 2014. So the technology actually has the ability to allow some of our members who would not physically be able to be present to come and enjoy the fellowship with their brethren in that virtual setting. So that's sort of another benefit of the virtual lodge setting that we know is possible but hadn't really intended. I think the big thing on many of our minds right now, aside from our own health and safety and the economic issues that we see going on today, related to our fraternity, is when will we get to go back to lodge, and what's it going to look like in the future? Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball, but we're doing the best we can to judge the situation as we move forward. One thing in particular that we're looking at, and actually met earlier this afternoon about, Jonathan, Walt, David, and I, was to talk about what annual communication will look like. Brethren, annual communication brings in somewhere between 1,000 to 1,300 people at one time. And even if we're in a situation where the state's completely open and we can have that many people in one space at one time, I feel like, given the current situation, the current health concerns, the demographics of many of our active members, that requiring all of our brethren to be in that one space at one time could be overly concerning. And so what we are discussing is the possibility of having a smaller group physically meet as we normally would do for annual communication, and then ask each of the district deputy grand masters to identify a location, perhaps a lodge, maybe a community college or some other facility within their district, where they can bring the brethren from their district to that meeting and then virtually connect to us at the physical location. So we would use the same type technology The Grand Line officers, maybe some of the dignitaries, committee members, things like guys like that would be present in a facility in Winston-Salem. We would be live streaming out to the brethren in the districts, and then each DDGM would facilitate sort of their part of annual communication, including managing the balloting, the credentials, things like that, ensuring that questions that came up could be answered, giving the opportunities to brethren to address myself or any of the other officers with any questions. That's sort of the rough outline of the plan we're looking at. We're going to be sending out a communication to the DDGMs, masters, wardens, and secretaries in the next week or so that will outline some of the first steps. And one of those first steps is just determining what the craft is interested in, how many people are interested in doing it that way this year. We're not trying to set a precedent for future years. We're just trying to be sensitive to what the health and safety of our members are currently. So that's a little bit about what's going on with annual communication. Like I said, we will be sending out a letter in the next week or so on that, and then we'll follow up as we learn more and make more determinations. We'll send out more details on that. Brethren, I've kind of rambled on a bit. I hope I've given everyone time to get their glass, whatever you happen to have. I have a glass of, I think this is Diet Coke. It's Lynch Lodge, June 1st, 2019. Mike Register probably remembers that date really well. But I have this glass, and I have a little toast, and I would ask my brethren to join with me if you have something. If you would, lift your glasses. And I want to propose a toast. This toast is titled, "May Masonry Ever Flourish." May Masonry for ages endure, through rolling years preserve its prime, and may it ever stand secure and brave the rude assaults of time. And now we're met upon the square, may love and friendship jointly reign. May peace and harmony be our care, and ne'er be broke the noblest chain. To Freemasonry, my brethren. Gilbert, I'll turn it back over to you. And Jonathan, if there's anything left.
That's it. Most worshipful. We always learn.
That was
Most
great.
worshipful has the last word. Great.
Yep.
Good evening to everybody in the state of North Carolina, Freemasons all. So,
there is one question. Will we have the recording of this posted somewhere?
I will work that out. I gotta see how to get it loaded on the server. So I'll see what I can do.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone. We really appreciate you joining us this evening. Mark, Bobby, thank you for your presentations. Gilbert, thank you for being the MC. Jonathan, thank you for all that you do. Good night, brethren, and I look forward to the next time.
Good night, Grandmaster.
Night.
All right.
Night, Grandmaster.
Good night.